After my wife died, I walked into the casino. By morning, my bank account was empty. My name is Marcus. I'm 52, and I sleep on my daughter's couch now. 3 months ago, I had a house with 27 years of memories and Sarah's coffee. Mug still on the kitchen counter. The cancer took her after 2 years of fighting. The bills took everything else. That first night, I just needed somewhere loud enough to drown out the silence. The dealer was kind. The whiskey was free. The cards felt like conversation. I lost $300 and felt something besides empty. So I went back. Then I went back again. The insurance money that was supposed to save me became chips. The house we'd raised Emily in became collateral. I told myself Sarah would understand. She always understood. But the night my daughter stood behind me at that table, watching me bet her college fund on a 16, I saw my wife's eyes looking back at me. Here's what nobody tells you about grief. It makes you believe the universe owes you something. Let me show you the 6 weeks between just one hand and selling my wedding ring. When you're gambling against loss itself, what runs out first? Your money, your family's patience, or your reasons to stop? Tuesday night, March 14th. I'd been dealing blackjack at the Riverboat Casino for 11 years, long enough to recognize every type of player who sits at my table. The desperate ones have a particular smell, not just cigarettes and yesterday's cologne, but something underneath, like milk starting to turn. Marcus Brennan had that smell when he sat down at 9:47 p.m. He chose my table over 3 empty ones, settling into third base, the last position before the dealer. I noticed his wedding ring first, white gold worn thin, the way he turned it constantly between placing chips. His clothes were nice, but wrinkled, like he'd slept in them or forgotten how hangers worked. Evening, I said, shuffling the 6 deck. Shoo. Buy in. He pushed $300 bills across the felt. 300. I counted it out, called it to Raymond at the pit boss station, slid his chips across. Marcus arranged them carefully, the greens in front, reds behind, like building a small wall between himself and something. Whiskey neat, he told the cocktail server, amber, but when she brought it, he just let it sit there, ice melting despite ordering it neat. She'd given him ice anyway. Nobody corrected her. Firsthand, he had 13 against my showing 6. Basic strategy says stay. He stayed. I busted with 22. He won but didn't smile, just pulled the chips toward him like gathering laundry. You know what's funny? He said to nobody in particular. The other players, a young guy in a Cardinals jersey and an older woman with oxygen tubes, shifted slightly. 3 weeks ago, I was planning our anniversary trip. 28 years next month. Had the whole thing booked. Bed and breakfast in Hermon, the one with the vineyard views. Cardinals jersey hit on 17 and busted. The woman with oxygen stayed on 12. Now she's dead. Marcus continued, placing his next bet. $25. Pancreatic cancer. 2 years of fighting. And then 3 weeks ago, just done. I flipped my whole card. 15. Hit. 21. Marcus pushed his losing chips forward without looking at them. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. The woman with oxygen cashed out, mumbling about needing to get home. Cardinals jersey suddenly remembered somewhere he needed to be. In 20 minutes, Marcus had cleared the table without raising his voice or making a scene. Just grief sitting there like a third player, making everyone uncomfortable that he played. For 2 hours, mechanical and steady. $25 bets, never varying. Hit on 16 against my 10. Stay on 12 against my 3. Perfect basic strategy, like he'd studied the charts, but his eyes never really focused on the cards. He was playing against something else. The bills, he said around 11 p.m., down about 200. You know what's crazy? Insurance covered the surgery, the chemo, the radiation. But that experimental treatment in Houston, the one that might have bought us another year, $60,000 out of pocket. We paid it. Took a second mortgage, but we paid it. I dealt the next hand. He had 20. I had 21. Didn't buy the year. He said, AT 1147. He colored up, cashing his remaining chips for larger denominations to carry to the cage. Down 300 even, like the number had been predetermined. He left a $20 tip, sliding it across. To me with 2 fingers. You're good at this, he said, standing up slowly, like his joints hurt. Patient. Thanks, I said, though patience wasn't what I'd call it. Endurance. Maybe. He forgot his reading glasses on the rail, prescription lenses. In a brown case. I called out, But he was already walking toward the exit, past the slots singing their electronic songs, past the ATM machines waiting like confessionals. I pocketed the glasses to return tomorrow, because I knew he'd be back tomorrow. They always come back when they're playing against grief instead of the house. The house just takes your money. Grief takes everything else, and you keep trying to win it back, hand by hand, bet by bet, until you've got nothing left to lose. That I watched him exit through the automatic doors into the March night, his whiskey still untouched on the rail, ice completely melted now, looking like amber-colored water. He'd left that behind 2:3 in the morning. My apartment smelled like cat food and coffee grounds. I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter, and Stevie immediately jumped up, rubbing against my arm while I counted my tips. $127 tonight. Marcus's 20 on top, still crisp like he'd gotten it from an ATM specifically. For tipping, I separated the bills by denomination, 3 20s, 11 10s, 7 1s, and recorded it in my notebook. March 14th, $127. The electric bill sat under Stevie's paw. Final notice, $147. Due in 5 days, or they'd cut service. I moved Stevie aside, did the math again. Rent was $850, due on the 1st. Car payment $240, already a week late. If I worked Friday through Sunday, pulled doubles on Saturday, maybe I'd clear another $400 in tips. Maybe. Stevie knocked the electric bill onto the floor, then stared at me like it was my fault. You're right, I told him. We're screwed. I'd been dealing cards since I was 27. Started right after dropping out of nursing school, 1 semester shy of graduating. Couldn't afford the last round of tuition after Dad got sick. That's what I told people. The truth was more complicated. Dad got sick because he drank. He drank because he gambled. He gambled because he couldn't stop. Found him that last time in the garage, passed out behind the wheel of his truck, engine off but keys in the ignition like he'd been planning to drive somewhere, but forgot where. The house was already in foreclosure by then. Mom had been dead 2 years. Cirrhosis took him 3 months later, but really, the casino killed him. Just took its time about it. I opened the fridge, half a carton of eggs, leftover Chinese from 4 days ago, a 12-pack of Diet Coke with 3 left. Grabbed a Coke and sat at my small table, the one I'd bought at Goodwill when I first moved in. Still had the previous owner's coffee rings on the surface, overlapping circles like Olympic rings for the divorced. My phone buzzed. Text from my sister Brenda. Is Dad's anniversary this week or next? I stared at the message. 5 years since he died, and she still couldn't remember the date. Or maybe she could and just wanted me to be the one to say it. March 20th, 6 days away. Same day the electric would get shut off if I didn't pay. Next week, I typed back. Tuesday, dinner at my place? Tom's making pot roast. Tom, her husband, who sold insurance and thought gambling was something people chose, like picking a restaurant. He'd asked once why Dad lost the house. Brenda had changed the subject so fast I got whiplash. Sure. I replied. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, you doing okay? I looked at my tip money spread across the table. At Stevie now lying on the electric bill like he could make it disappear. At Marcus's glasses in their brown case, waiting to be returned. Yeah, I typed. I'm good. Another lie. I was getting good at them. Had to be, working where I did. Every night, I watched people destroy themselves and smiled while they did it. Dealt them the cards that would ruin them. Took their tips paid, with money they couldn't afford to lose. Went home and paid my bills with their disasters. Marcus would be back tomorrow. He'd sit at my table and talk about Sarah and lose another few $100s trying to feel something besides empty. And I'd deal the cards and take his tips and pay my electric bill with his grief. I set aside the 20 he'd given me, separate from the others. Blood money, my mother would have called it. But Mom never had to pay rent after Dad gambled away the house. Never had to choose between electricity and groceries. Never had to drop out of school to watch him die. Stevie jumped into my lap, purring. I scratched behind his ears and thought about Marcus's wedding ring, how he kept turning it, like if he spun it enough times, it might take him back to when it meant something besides lost. My phone buzzed again. Brenda, love you. I didn't reply. Couldn't think of another lie that would fit. Instead, I put the money in my lockbox, set my alarm for noon, and went to bed still wearing my dealer's vest. Stevie curled up on my feet. Through the thin walls, I could hear my neighbor's TV, Some infomercial about getting rich quick. Tomorrow, Marcus would come back for his glasses. Tomorrow, I'd deal him cards until he lost enough to feel something. Tomorrow, I'd pay my bills with what he left behind. The cycle would continue, like my father's Olympic rings of coffee stains, overlapping and permanent. Wednesday night, Marcus showed up at 7 sharp, 2 hours earlier than yesterday. Freshly shaved but wearing the same blue dress shirt, just with the wrinkles pressed flat, like he'd ironed it without washing it first. "You forgot these," I said, sliding his glasses across the felt. He looked surprised, then embarrassed. "Thank you. I didn't even realize." He trailed off, pocketing them carefully. "Mind if I play?" Like he needed permission. Like this wasn't a casino where anyone with money could sit down and lose it. "Cards are hot tonight," said Vince, already 3 beers deep at first base. Vince worked construction, came in every Wednesday and Friday, never lost more than 200. "Had a system," he said. Everyone had a system. Dorothy sat in the middle, her oxygen tank beside her chair like a patient dog. Retired teacher, widowed. 5 years. She played $20 hands and made them last 3 hours. Just wanted company that didn't pity her for the tubes in her nose. Marcus bought in for 500 this time. I counted it out, called it to Raymond, who made a note in his log. Second night in a row was nothing. Third night made you a regular. Fourth made you a problem. Insurance company called today, Marcus said, arranging his chips. About Sarah's life insurance. Nobody responded, but nobody left either. That was the unwritten rule at the table. You could talk, but nobody had to listen. $200,000 policy, he continued, placing a $25 bet. We paid into it for 20 years. You know what they're paying out? $50,000. I dealt the cards. Marcus had 11, doubled down against my 6. Drew a 10 for 21. Small victory. Pre-existing condition clause, he said, pulling his winnings toward him. Because she had irregular cells on a pap smear 15 years ago. 15 years. Never became cancer, just irregular cells. But apparently that counts. Dorothy made a sympathetic noise. Vince studied his cards like they contained answers. For the next hour, Marcus played perfect basic strategy. Hit when the book said hit. Stayed when it said stay. Doubled on 11. Split eights. He was up $400, the chips stacking higher in front of him like a small city he was building. Sarah would have loved this, he said, then caught himself. No, that's not true. She hated gambling. Said it was just math dressed up as hope. Smart woman, Dorothy said softly. Yeah, Marcus agreed. She was. That's when it shifted. I saw it happen. The moment he went from playing cards to playing against the universe. He started pressing bets, letting winnings ride. 50 became 100. 100 became 200. Sir, Raymond appeared beside the table, friendly but watchful. Everything good here? Can I get you a comp for the restaurant? Marcus laughed, bitter and short. I'm fine. Just playing cards. But he wasn't fine. His hands had started shaking slightly, the way my father's used to when he was deep into a losing streak. Not from nerves. From something worse, the absolute. Certainty that the next hand would fix everything. By 10 o'clock, he'd given back the 400 plus another 2. Dorothy excused herself, said something about her cats needing medicine. Vince tried to offer advice. You're chasing, buddy, he said, not unkindly. Maybe take a break. Get some food. I'm not hungry, Marcus said, pulling out his wallet. 3 credit cards fanned out like another losing hand. He chose one, headed to the ATM. He's gonna blow it all, Vince said to me quietly. I kept dealing. To the empty spots, practice hands nobody was playing. Probably. Can't you do something? Cut him off. He's not drunk. Not disorderly. Just sad. Vince finished his beer, cashed out his remaining $40 in chips. This place is depressing. He left just as Marcus came back with another 320s, fresh from the ATM. The machine had charged him $8 for the privilege of accessing his own money. He didn't seem to notice. What time do you work tomorrow? Asked me, sitting back down. 6 to 2. I'll be here. It wasn't a question, just a statement of fact, like saying water was wet or Sarah was dead. He played until midnight, mechanical now, no longer talking about insurance or medical bills or anything else. Just placing bets and watching them disappear. When he finally colored up, he was down 700 for the night. See you tomorrow, Diane, he said, reading my name tag for the first time that he left another $20 tip that I wanted to refuse it, to tell him to keep it, to go home and never come back. But I needed electricity, needed rent, needed to eat. So I took it, added it to my tin, and dealt the next hand to nobody. Thursday afternoon, my day off. I was comparing prices on pasta sauce at Walmart when I saw him. Marcus stood in the pharmacy line, holding a small white bag, looking at his phone like it contained bad news. Diane. He seemed startled, almost guilty. I didn't expect. Day off, I said, holding up my basket. Ramen, bread, eggs, the Diet Coke that kept me functioning. We stood there awkwardly, two people who knew each other in one context suddenly existing in another. Like seeing your dentist at a bar. Sleeping pills, he said, lifting the pharmacy bag slightly. Can't seem to, you know. I knew. After Dad started losing big, he'd pace the house all night, calculating odds, planning systems, convinced the next day would be different. My daughter's coming tomorrow, Marcus said, moving out of line so an elderly man could pass. Emily. From Chicago. Haven't seen her since, he stopped. Since the funeral, probably. We walked toward the groceries. His cart had the saddest collection I'd ever seen. Frozen dinners for one, instant coffee, white bread, peanut butter. The meals of someone who'd forgotten why eating mattered. She's worried about me, he continued. Keeps calling. I tell her I'm fine. Are you? He laughed, but it sounded like something breaking. I went to the casino last night after I left. Played until 4 in the morning at different tables. Lost another 300. I noticed his wedding ring had moved to his right hand. Still there, but rearranged, like furniture in a room you're trying to make feel different. Maybe take a break while Emily's here, I suggested. Spend time with her. Yeah, he agreed too quickly. Of course. That's the plan. His phone buzzed. He looked at it, frowned, declined the call. Then it buzzed again. And again. Bank alerts, probably. I recognized the pattern from my own phone. The insistent rhythm of financial panic that we reached the checkout lanes. He got in line behind a woman with 3 kids, all of them asking for candy. Normal family chaos. Marcus watched them like they were exhibits in a museum of his former life. Sarah and I used to bring Emily here when she was little, he said. She'd ride in the cart, pointing at everything. Sarah would sneak healthy stuff in while I distracted him with stories. The mother ahead of us said no to the candy. Her kids groaned but accepted it, the way kids do when they know the rules are firm. I should go, Marcus said suddenly. Emily's calling again. But he didn't move toward the registers. Just stood there, holding his sad groceries and sleeping pills, looking at his phone light up with his daughter's name. She looks just like Sarah, he said quietly. Same eyes. Same worry lines when she's concerned. It's like being haunted by the best parts of someone. He answered the phone on the 5th ring. Hi, sweetheart. No, I'm fine. Just at the store. Yes, I'm eating. Tomorrow? Of course I'll be home. After he hung up, he abandoned his cart right there in line. I need to go. He walked toward the exit, leaving his groceries behind like evidence of good intentions. I wanted to call after him, but what would I say? Don't come tonight? Don't lose more money you don't have. Instead, I watched him sit in his Camry in the parking lot, not starting it, just sitting there making phone calls. 10 minutes. 15. The sun bouncing off his windshield made it impossible to see his face, but I knew the expression. The same one my father had when he was negotiating with credit card companies, making promises he couldn't keep. That I loaded my groceries and drove home thinking about Emily, flying in from Chicago to check on a father who was disappearing $25 at a time. Friday night, 11 p.m. Marcus had been at my table for 4 hours, and his daughter had been asleep for 1, or so he claimed. Jet lag, he explained, but his eyes darted away when he said it. She crashed early. He was playing $50 hands now, double his usual bet. The whiskey he'd been ignoring all week sat empty beside him, and he'd ordered another. His shirt had a small stain on the collar, coffee or something darker. Insurance company called again, he said, slurring slightly. Lawyers now. They're sending lawyers to explain why 20 years of payments mean nothing. The table was empty, except for us and a kid named Brandon who looked barely 21, kept checking his phone between hands like someone was keeping tabs on him. Student loan money, probably. I'd seen that desperation before. The way college kids convinced themselves they could multiply their semester's funds. Marcus had already blown through $600. He'd tried 3 different credit cards at the ATM, and Kevin from day shift had whispered to me during shift change that 2 had been declined. You know what Sarah said when she was dying? Marcus asked, betting another 50. She said, take care of Emily. Not, I love you, or be happy. Just take care of Emily. I dealt him a 13. He hit, busted with a face card. And here, I am, he continued, pushing forward another 50. Mother of the year. Brandon cashed out, mumbling something about meeting friends. That left Marcus alone at my table, the way he seemed to prefer it now. No witnesses except me, and I was paid to watch. Sir. Raymond appeared, casual but purposeful. How's everything tonight? Fantastic, Marcus said, the word sharp with sarcasm. Living the dream. Raymond made a note in his log. 4th night now. Officially a pattern. Emily wants to see her. Mother's grave tomorrow, Marcus said after Raymond walked away. Haven't been there since the funeral. Can't. It's too permanent. He pulled out his phone, showed me pictures. Emily at graduation in cap and gown, Sarah beside her, already thin but smiling. Christmas morning, Emily in pajamas, Sarah in a headscarf from chemo. The last photo was Sarah in a hospital bed, Emily holding her hand. Marcus's thumb covered part of the image like he couldn't bear to see it all. Beautiful family, I said, because what else could I say? He corrected. Was a beautiful family. By midnight, he'd moved up to $100 hands. His ATM trips were taking longer, probably calling credit cards for cash advances. The shaking in his hands had gotten worse, and not from the whiskey. She's got Sarah's stubbornness, he said about Emily. Drove down from Chicago 3 times during Sarah's treatment, even when we told her to focus on school. Wouldn't listen. He lost another 100. Then another. I should go home, he said but didn't move. Emily will worry if she wakes up, and I'm not there. Then go, I said, breaking protocol. Dealers weren't supposed to give advice that he looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time. You ever lose someone? My father. 5 years ago. How'd you get through it? I thought about telling him the truth, that my father had sat in chairs just like his, in casinos just like this, until there was nothing left to lose. That getting through it meant watching him destroy himself first. One day at a time, I said instead that he laughed, bitter and knowing. Yeah, that's what they say. At 1:30, he'd lost $2,000. His phone had rung 6 times, Emily calling. He didn't answer. One more hand, he said, pulling out cash I knew he didn't have to lose. Just one more. It's never just one more. I'd dealt enough cards to know that. One more becomes 5 more. Becomes until the money runs out, becomes until the casino closes, becomes until there's nothing left. I dealt the hand. He had 20. I had 21. Story of my life, he said, leaving a $50 tip with money he'd probably taken from Emily's college fund that he stood to leave, swaying slightly. Tell Emily I'm sorry, he said, then seemed to realize she wasn't there. If you see her, if she comes looking, she won't come looking here, I said, but we both knew I was wrong. Saturday, 8 p.m. I knew Emily the moment she walked in, even though I'd only seen photos. She had Sarah's face, but Marcus's way of moving. Careful, like the floor might give way. She stood behind her father for 15 minutes before he noticed her. Marcus had been there since the morning shift, according to Kevin. 12 hours straight. Only leaving the table for ATM runs and bathroom breaks. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shirt untucked, and he'd developed a tic where he'd touch his right hand where his wedding ring used to be. He'd moved it back to his left hand sometime during the day. When he finally turned and saw Emily, the whole table went silent. Even the slot machines seemed to quiet, though that was probably my imagination. Dad, she said. Just that. Not angry, not pleading. Just tired. His voice cracked. I thought you were asleep? It's 8 o'clock. She wore a Northwestern sweatshirt and jeans, hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than 23. Her eyes were exactly like the photos, Sarah's eyes, but with Marcus's sadness now. One more hand, Marcus said. Then we'll go. Emily stood there for another hour, watching her father bet money they didn't have on cards that wouldn't save him. She didn't plead or yell or cry, just watched, like she was memorizing something she'd need to remember later. That a few players came and went, took one look at the father-daughter tableau, and found other tables. Nobody wants to gamble in someone else's tragedy. Finally, Emily spoke again. Mom's grave looks nice. The flowers you ordered are beautiful. Marcus's hand froze over his chips. You went. Someone had to. He turned to look at her, and for a moment, I thought he might actually leave. Get up, walk away, choose his daughter over the cards. Instead, he said, 5 more minutes. Emily nodded like she'd expected this. I'll be in the car. She left, and Marcus played faster, angrier. $100 hands. No hesitation. He split tens, the stupidest move in blackjack. Hit on 17. Doubled down on 15. Your daughter. Seems nice, I said, breaking protocol again. She's all I have left, he said, then pushed another 100 forward. And I'm going to lose her too. It wasn't a question, just a statement of fact, like water seeking its level. By 10 o'clock, he'd dropped $2,000. His phone lit up with Emily's name, but he didn't answer. Just kept playing, kept losing, kept tipping me with money that should have gone to keeping their house. I need to go, he said at midnight, but played 3 more hands. She's waiting. I reminded him. She's used to it, he said, and something in his voice broke. Waited for Sarah to get better. Waited for the treatments to work. Now waiting for me to stop this. He stood finally, unsteady. You know what the worst part is? I know exactly what I'm doing. I know I'm destroying everything. And I can't stop. He left a $100 tip, his last 100, probably. After he left, I found myself thinking about Emily in that car, waiting. How many hours had she spent waiting for parents to come back to her? First from the hospital, now from the casino. Raymond came by, made another note in his log. His daughter, he asked. Yeah, shame, he said, and walked away. At 2 a.m., I cashed out my tips. $312, at least 100 from Marcus alone. Blood money from a dying family. I drove home thinking about Emily's eyes. How? They looked just like Sarah's in those photos, watching Marcus gamble away their future one hand at a time. Tuesday, second week. I'd just paid my rent with weekend tips. Marcus alone had contributed $200 over 3 days. The money order felt heavier than paper should. When I got to work, he was already there. Had been since opening according to the day's shift. His superstitions were getting stronger. Only sat at third base. Tapped the table twice before hitting. Kept Sarah's hospital bracelet visible beside his chips, touching it after every loss. Sold her jewelry today, he said without preamble. The engagement ring went for $3,000. Wedding band for $800. The earrings I gave her for our 20th anniversary, $500. Dorothy was back at the table, watching Marcus. With grandmother concern. Honey, maybe you should. I know what I should do. He cut her off. Not mean, just matter of fact. Should go home. Should get help. Should stop. I know. He'd lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. His dress, shirt hung loose, and he'd punched a new hole in his belt with something sharp. The leather was frayed where he'd forced it through. My brother called, he said, dealing into a story nobody asked for. Lives in Denver. Says he can. Lend me $5,000. For grief counseling, he thinks. To get back on my feet. Raymond walked by, paused, made eye contact with me. A question in his look. Is this guy okay? I dealt the next hand instead of answering. What would I say? No, he's not okay, but his money spends the same. You know what's funny? Marcus said, losing another 50. I'm not even trying to win anymore. Just trying to feel something. When I win, nothing. When I lose, nothing. Just nothing. A new player sat down, took one look at Marcus's energy, and moved to another table. My dad was like this, Dorothy said quietly. After Mom died. Except his poison was horses, not cards. Marcus looked at her with sudden interest. What happened to him? Lost everything. Moved in with me. Died angry at the world for taking Mom and his money. She placed a small bet, but mostly angry at himself. Marcus nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he already knew. By 10 o'clock, he was down 500. He excused himself, came back with cash, ATM receipts sticking out of his pocket. I glimpsed the balance, $47.83. Last of the checking account, he announced. Savings is already gone. Emily's college fund, that went last week. Dorothy left without saying goodbye. Marcus played until exactly 2 a.m., closing time, like he was punching a clock at the world's worst job. He'd developed a routine. Arrive at opening, play until close, tip me whatever was left. See you tomorrow, Diane, he said, sliding me $40 I didn't want to take but couldn't afford to refuse. After he left, Raymond pulled me aside. How much has he lost? I don't keep track of customers' losses. I lied. Ballpark. Thousands. Maybe 10, 15. Raymond nodded. He's not banned, but keep an eye on him. We don't need someone doing something stupid on property. Something stupid. Like that was still in the future, not happening right now in slow motion. I drove home thinking about Dorothy's father dying angry. About my father dying drunk. About Marcus dying in a different way. $25 at a time, one hand after another, until there was nothing left but the angered Dorothy talked. About my phone had a text from my sister. Dinner tomorrow? For Dad's anniversary. 5 years since we buried him. Marcus was speed-running the same path in 5 weeks. Wednesday afternoon, I sat at Brenda's dining table while her husband Tom carved pot roast and talked about insurance premiums. Their house smelled like normalcy, laundry detergent and cooking, food and the baby powder scent of my nephew Tyler. 5 years, Brenda said, not really to anyone. Feels like yesterday. It didn't feel like yesterday to me. It felt like a lifetime ago and also like it never stopped happening. Dad dying was a process that started years before his liver quit. He was a good man, Tom said, because that's what you say. Brenda and I exchanged a look. Good was complicated. Dad was funny, smart, could fix anything with duct tape and determination. He also gambled away our childhood home and died owing money to people whose names we never learned. Remember when he taught us to play poker? Brenda asked, smiling at something that wasn't really happy. With pennies from the change jar? I remembered. I was 7, she was 10. Dad dealing cards at our kitchen table, teaching us about tells and odds and when to fold. Mom watching from the doorway, already seeing where it would lead. Tyler started fussing in his high chair. I picked him up, this warm weight of possibility. Would he inherit it? The thing that made Dad need to bet, need to risk, need to lose. Everything to feel alive. Diane's thinking about going back to nursing school, Brenda told Tom. The lie smooth as water. That's great, Tom said. Medical field's always hiring. Maybe next year. I said, the same thing I'd been saying for 5 years. After dinner, Brenda walked me to my car. The street was quiet, suburban perfect. The kind of neighborhood Dad grew up wanting to give us. You okay? She asked. You seem distant. I thought about Marcus, probably at my table right now on my night off, losing money to whoever was dealing. About his daughter Emily, back in Chicago, checking her phone for calls that wouldn't come. There's this customer. I started, then stopped. What was the point? Brenda had built a life where casinos were places you went for anniversaries, not daily destruction. Be careful, she said anyway, understanding something in my silence. Don't get too involved. Too late. Every tip I took made me involved. Every hand I dealt. Every night I watched him sink and said nothing because rent was due and electricity wasn't free and cat food cost money. Driving home, I passed the casino. Thought about stopping in, checking on Marcus. But it was my night off, and boundaries mattered. Even if they were arbitrary lines I drew in sand that was already slipping home, Stevie waited on the kitchen counter. I opened his food. The good stuff, the kind that cost $4 a can. Paid for with Marcus's tips. My phone buzzed. Text from Kevin at work. Your boy just dropped $2,000 in 3 hours. Rough night. I turned off my phone and went to bed, but kept thinking about Tyler in my arms, that baby weight of potential. About cycles and inheritance, and whether we choose our destructions or they choose us. Through the wall, my neighbor's TV played an infomercial about debt consolidation. The host promised freedom from financial burden, a new start, a second chance. Marcus was running out of second chances. Hell, he was running out of first ones. Thursday night, week 3. Marcus looked like he'd aged 5 years and 5 days. His brother's money had arrived. $5,000 in cash he'd shown everyone at the table like a prize. For grief counseling, he said with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. That's what I told him. Grief counseling and moving expenses. For 2 hours, he played smart. Conservative bets, basic strategy, actually ahead $1,200. He called Emily, told her things were looking up. I heard her relief through the phone, tiny and distant. Then the shift happened. It always happened. The moment when winning wasn't enough, when the smart part of his brain shut off and something else took over, he started pressing bets, letting it ride. 200 became 4 became 8. The 1,200 profit evaporated in 20 minutes. Sarah would understand, he said to no one. She always understood. But that was a lie everyone at the table recognized. The dead don't understand anything. They're just dead, and we use their memory to justify whatever we were going to do anyway. By midnight, he'd blown through $3,800 from his brother's loan. You know what I did yesterday? He asked, his words slightly slurred from the whiskey he'd started drinking. Went to Emily's old elementary school. Just sat in the parking lot. Remembered dropping her off. How Sarah would pack her lunch with little notes. He bet another 200. Lost. The notes said things like, "You're brave," or "Math is hard but you're harder." Sarah was good at that. Making people feel capable. Another 200. Another loss. "I'm supposed to use this money for therapy," he said, laughing. "This is therapy, right? Cheaper than talking to someone about feelings." Not cheaper. Not even close. Emily called. 6 times today, he continued. I answered once. Told her I was at a job interview. She was so happy. So fucking happy about a lie. The other players had long since left. Just Marcus and me and the weight of his destruction between us. I took money from her college fund, he said quietly. 15,000. She doesn't know yet. How do you tell your kid you stole their future? I dealt the next hand. He had 19. I had 20. Should have stayed in bed the day Sarah died, he said. Just stayed there until I died too. By 2 a.m., he'd lost everything except $200. He pushed it all forward on the last hand. For Emily, he said, like betting it would somehow transform into something noble that he got blackjack. Won 300. Should have been assigned to stop, to take something home. Instead, he put it all on the next hand. Lost. See, he said to me. Even when I win, I lose. He left a $20 tip. Money he'd borrowed from an ATM on his credit card at 24% interest. After he left, I stood in the bathroom staring at myself in the mirror. My dealer's vest looked like armor that protected nothing. I was 38 years old, enabling destruction for tips, watching people drown, and doing nothing but dealing the next hand. My phone rang. Emily's number. She'd gotten it from the casino somehow. I didn't answer. What would I say? Your father's destroying himself, and I'm helping? Stop him because I can't. The phone rang again. And again. On the 4th call, I answered. Is he there? Her voice sounded exactly like Sarah's must-have, calling hospitals, calling doctors, calling anyone who might help. He left, I said. How bad is it? I wanted to lie. Wanted to say he was fine, just going through something, it would pass. Bad, I said instead. Silence. Then, can you help him? I deal cards, I said. That's all I do. She hung up. I stood there in the bathroom, fluorescent lights buzzing, looking at myself in the mirror. 11 years of this. 11 years of watching people feed their paycheck into the machine of chance. 11 years since I dropped out of nursing school to watch my father die. I could have helped people. Could have been a nurse. Instead, I dealt cards to the walking wounded and took their money and called it a living. Monday, week 4. Marcus showed up in different clothes. Goodwill special, the kind with someone else's smell still in the fabric. His Camry was gone. Sold. It to CarMax, he explained. 4,000. Enough to keep playing. But he wasn't playing with car money today. Just $100. Making $10 bets last 3 hours like rationing water in a desert. Dorothy was back, watching Marcus. Like he was a grandson making bad choices. She tried to buy him dinner from the restaurant. He refused with the kind of pride that comes right before the fall. The life insurance company sent their final decision. He said, his hands shaking. Not from nerves, but from not eating. 50,000 is all. The lawyers said we could fight it, but that would cost 30,000 we don't have. He'd developed a tremor, the kind you get from skipping meals and sleeping in chairs. Security had found him that morning in the parking lot, asleep on a bench. Sarah had this way of making tuna casserole, he said, apropos of nothing. Added potato chips on top. Emily hated it as a kid, loves it now. Comfort food, she calls it. His $10 bet lost. He pushed forward another. I haven't been home. In 3 days, he said. Emily keeps the porch light on. I drive by, he caught himself. I walk by and see it. Can't go in, though. Can't face her. Dorothy finally gave up trying to help, cashed out her small winnings, and left. But not before putting a $20 bill next to Marcus's chips. For food, she said that he used it to gamble. Lost it in 2 hands. By midnight. He'd nursed his $100 down to nothing. Then he did something I'd never seen before, started asking other players for money. Small amounts. 20 here, 50 there. Promising to pay back double. Most said no. But Vince, God bless his working class heart, gave him 50. You need help, man, Vince said. Real help. Not this. Tomorrow, Marcus promised. I'll get help tomorrow. Tomorrow. The gambler's favorite word. Tomorrow they'll quit. Tomorrow they'll win it back. Tomorrow they'll become the person they were before the cards turned bad. Marcus lost Vince's 50 in 10 minutes. I had a job interview today, he said to no one. Warehouse work. Night shift. Didn't go. Couldn't leave the table. He stood up, swaying slightly. You know what's funny? I used to judge people like me. Thought addiction was weakness. Now no, it's not weakness. It's gravity. And I'm falling. He left no tip because he had nothing left to leave. After my shift, I sat in my car in the employee parking lot, counting my tips. $90. Slow night. Rent was due in a week, and I was 200 short. I thought about Emily, keeping that porch light on. About Dorothy's father dying angry. About my own father, who'd sat in parking lots like this, counting what he had left, calculating what he could risk. A knock on my window made me jump. Marcus stood there, looking embarrassed. Can you spot me 100? He asked through the glass. I know you're not supposed to, but I'm good for it. My brother's sending more money. I looked at this man who'd lost everything. Wife, savings, car, dignity, standing in a parking lot at 3 a.m. asking his dealer for a loan. I can't, I said. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. Worth asking. He walked away into the darkness. No car to drive. Nowhere to go. Just walking. I drove home with his absence feeling heavier than his presence ever had. Tomorrow he'd be back. If not tomorrow, the next day. They always came back until they couldn't anymore. And I'd be there, dealing cards, taking what little remained. Tuesday night, week 4. Marcus arrived with $2,000 in cash, nervous energy radiating off him like heat from a fever. Business opportunity, he said when I raised an eyebrow. Short-term loan. Just need to double it by morning. I knew that energy. Borrowed money from the wrong people. The kind who charged interest by the day and collected with enthusiasm. He played like someone with a gun to his head, which might have been literally true. Won big early, up $3,500 by 9 o'clock. Should have walked away. Should have paid back whoever he'd borrowed from. Instead, he moved to the high-limit table that I watched from across the floor as he sat down at the $1,000 minimum table. The dealer over there, Patricia, had been doing this longer than me. She didn't even blink when Marcus pushed his entire stake forward. 40 minutes. That's how long it took to lose everything. When he came back to my table, he had the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd just watched their last chance evaporate. They want their money by noon tomorrow, he said quietly. With interest, it's $2,500. He pulled out his last 20, worn and soft like it had been folded and unfolded many times. This is it, he said. Last $20 to my name. He bet it on one hand. Got a 12 against my showing ace. The worst possible position. He stayed, knowing he'd probably lose but too tired to care. I flipped my whole card. 7. 18 total. He won. See, he said, but there was no joy in it. Even when I win, I'm still $2,460 short. He pushed the $40 to me as a tip. It's been nice knowing you, Diane. The way he said it made my skin cold. Marcus, my wife died 6 weeks ago, he said, standing. I had a house, a car, savings, a daughter who looked at me with respect. Now I have $40 I'm giving to you, and men who'll hurt me tomorrow when I can't pay. He smiled, sad and final. Sarah always said I was bad with money. He walked away before I could respond. Not toward the exit, but toward the bathroom. Something about his walk, the resignation in it, made me flag security. They found him 20 minutes later, sitting in a stall, crying. Not hurting himself, just crying like people do when they realize they've passed the last exit and there's no turning back. Raymond had him escorted out, gently but firmly. Banned for 24 hours. For his own good. He'll be back Thursday, Raymond told me. They always come back. But I wasn't sure Marcus had a Thursday left in him. I dealt the rest of my shift on autopilot. Thinking about those men waiting for their money. About Emily in Chicago not knowing her father had borrowed from wolves. About Sarah dead 6 weeks. And her husband following her down a different kind of hole. At home, I counted my tips. The 40 from Marcus on top, Blood money in the purest sense. I separated it from the rest, put it in an envelope. For what? To give back to him? To send to Emily? To pretend I hadn't taken hundreds from him over the past month while watching him dissolve? Stevie jumped on the counter, knocking over the envelope. The 220s scattered on the floor. I picked them up, noticed writing on one faint pencil on the margin, for Emily's graduation dinner. He'd been carrying that 20 for who knows how long, saving it for a celebration that happened months ago, or maybe one that would never come. And he'd given it to me, his dealer, the person who'd helped him lose everything else. I put the 20 in my wallet, separate from everything else. Evidence of something, though I wasn't sure what. Outside, sirens wailed down the highway. Could be anything. Usually was nothing. But tonight, I wondered. Friday, week 5. Marcus was back, but different. Bruised jaw he tried to hide by keeping his head turned, favoring his left side when he walked. Said he fell, but bruises don't lie the way people do. Worked out a payment plan, he said, which meant they'd hurt him enough to make a point, but not enough to stop him from earning. He was borrowing money at the table now. 20 from a tourist, 50 from a regular who should have known better, promising to pay back double when his ship came in. His stories about Sarah were getting confused, past and present mixing like shuffled cards. Sarah loves the spring, he said, present tense. Then caught himself. Loved. She loved spring. Vince had given him another 50 out of pity or stupidity. Marcus lost it in 3 hands, then asked Vince for more. I'm done, Vince said, disgusted. You need help, not money. Same thing, Marcus replied, but even he didn't believe it. Dorothy left early, couldn't watch anymore. Before she went, she touched Marcus's shoulder gently. Your wife wouldn't want this, she said. Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. My wife isn't here to want anything. By 11, he was asking me for money. Just 100. You've made thousands. Off me. Just give me back 100. I can't, I said, though my tip envelope had 300 in it, most from him over the past 5 weeks. Can't or won't. Both. Neither. The distinction didn't matter. Is there gambling in heaven? He asked suddenly. Sarah believed in heaven. Said we'd be together again. You think they have blackjack in heaven? I don't know about heaven, I said, dealing the next hand. But there's definitely gambling in hell. He laughed for the first time in weeks. Real laughter, not the bitter kind. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right. He played until close with borrowed money, losing it all. Tipped me with Vince's last $10. Emily called today, he said as he stood to leave. Got her number changed. Can't blame her. He walked toward the exit, then turned back. You've been kind, he said. Kinder than you had to be. That matters. After he left, Kevin told me Emily had called the casino earlier, asking for me specifically. She'd gone through credit card statements, found my name in the tips section. She wanted to know how bad it was, Kevin said. I told her to talk to you. But what would I tell her? That her father had lost about $47,000 in 5 weeks? That he'd borrowed from dangerous people? That he'd chosen cards over her every single day since her mother died? My phone buzzed. Unknown number, Chicago area code. I let it ring. Tuesday. Afternoon, week 6. I met Emily at a Starbucks near the casino. She looked exhausted, older than 23, holding a folder like it contained evidence in a murder trial. Which, in a way, it did. 47,000, she said without preamble. That's what he's lost. I went through everything. Bank statements, credit cards, the house papers. The number sat between us like a body. The house is in foreclosure, she continued. He hasn't. Paid the mortgage in 2 months. Spent it at your table instead. Not just my table. I said weakly, does that matter? Her voice was controlled, but barely. You saw him every night. You took his tips. You watched him fall apart. She was right. I had watched. Dealt cards. Taken his money. Gone home and paid my bills with his destruction. Can you ban him? She asked. Refused to deal to him. He hasn't broken any rules. He's not drunk, not disorderly. He's sick. Emily interrupted. Can't you see that? He's sick and you're enabling him. I finished. Yes. We sat in silence. Around us, normal people lived normal lives. Ordered coffee, checked phones, complained about traffic. Nobody losing houses. Nobody's father dissolving $25 at a time. My mom fought for 2 years, Emily said quietly. Chemo, radiation, surgery, experimental trials. She fought. So hard. And for what? So he could gamble away everything she left behind. She opened the folder, showed me photos. Marcus before, coaching Emily's soccer team, at her college graduation, dancing with Sarah at their 25th anniversary. This was my dad, she said. The man at your table isn't my dad. He's something else. Something the grief created. Grief doesn't create anything, I said, thinking of my own father. It just reveals what was already there. She looked at me sharply. You've seen this before. My father. Different game, same ending. How long? 3 years from first bet to death. But really, he was gone after 6 months. The rest was just watching him disappear. Emily's hands shook as she closed the folder. I changed the locks yesterday. Told him he can come home when he's ready. To get help, he has to choose the casino or me. We both knew what he'd choose. Had already chosen every night for 6 weeks. I'm coming tonight, she said. One more try? Will you? She stopped. I don't know what I'm asking. Just be human, I guess. See him as a person, not just another player. I wanted to tell her I already did. That every night I saw him as someone's father, someone's husband, someone who was drowning. But seeing and saving were different things. I'll be there, I said. She stood to leave, then turned back. Do you have a father? Had. He died 5 years ago. From gambling. From everything that came with it. She nodded like that explained. Something. Thursday night. I'll be there Thursday. After she left, I sat in that Starbucks thinking about cycles. My father to Marcus. Marcus to whoever sat down next. An endless chain of destruction, and I was just one of the links. But I was also a person who needed rent money, who had bills, who dropped out of school to watch one gambler die, and now dealt cards to others. Emily had asked me to be human. But being human was the problem. Humans needed money. Humans rationalized. Humans looked away when looking hurt too much. Thursday night, Emily would stand behind her father and ask him to choose. And I'd deal whatever cards came next, because that's what dealers do. That we deal, and people play, and everyone loses something. In the end, Thursday night, 8 p.m., Emily stood behind her father just like she'd promised. Marcus had been there since opening, down to his last $100, playing $10 hands like breadcrumbs leading nowhere. When he finally saw her, his whole body sagged. Just her name, like an exhale. Dad. She didn't move closer. Didn't touch him. Just stood there in her Northwestern sweatshirt, looking like Sarah's ghost come to collect. The table went silent. Even the ambient casino noise seemed to fade, like someone had turned down the volume on everything except this moment. I'm almost done, Marcus said. One more hand. It's always one more hand. Emily's voice was steady, rehearsed. She'd practiced this. Mom's been dead 7 weeks. You've been here for 6 of them. Marcus turned back to the table, couldn't look at her. I know. Do you? Because I found the foreclosure notice. The credit card statements. The loan from Uncle Dennis you gambled away. Each word was precise. Careful. She wasn't here to fight. She was here to witness. Your apartment key is on the table at home, she continued. The locks are changed. When you're ready to get help. Real help. Not promises, you can come home. She pulled something from her pocket. A key on a Northwestern keychain. The one Sarah had bought her for graduation. Set it on the table next to his chips. This is mine. Take it when you're ready to be my father again. Marcus stared at the key like it might burn him. Emily, I know you're sick, Dad. I know you're grieving. But I can't watch you die too. I won't. She turned to me. You're Diane. Not a question. I nodded. Take care of him, she said, which was absurd. I dealt cards. I didn't take care of anyone. Then she left, walking steady and straight, not looking back. Marcus picked up the key, held it like a rosary, then put it in his pocket and pushed his remaining chips forward. Deal, he said that I dealt. He had 20. I had 19. He won. See? He said to the empty space where Emily had been. I'm winning now. But winning when you've already lost everything. Isn't winning at all that he played until 5:47 a.m., when his ATM card finally declined. 12 hours since Emily left. He'd turned that 100 into 600, then lost it all plus another 200 from credit card advances. Can you call her? He asked me. Tell her I'm trying? Trying what? He couldn't answer. Security walked him out gently, like pallbearers. He'd been trying to sell his watch to other players. A Seiko Sarah had given him for their 10th anniversary. The break room afterward, I sat with my head in my hands. Kevin asked if I was okay. No, I said. I'm not. I thought about Emily's key in Marcus's pocket. About Sarah dying after 2 years of fighting. About my father's keys I'd found in his pocket after he died. To a truck that had been repossessed. Months earlier, some people carry keys to doors they'll never open again. Marcus had two now. Emily's apartment and whatever life he'd had before the cards turned bad. Tomorrow was Friday. Payday for most people. The casino would be packed. Marcus would be back if he had any money left to lose. And I'd deal, because rent was due, because this was what I knew, because 11 years of watching people drown had taught me that swimming was impossible and floating was all we could manage. Friday morning, 6 a.m. My shift had ended, but I couldn't leave. Sat in the break room listening to Kevin describe Marcus's final spiral. Security had to walk him out, Kevin said. He was trying to trade his watch for chips, offering to clean tables for house credit. I counted my tips. $312, at least $100 from Marcus over the past 12 hours. Money that came from cash advances on cards that were already maxed, from pawned jewelry, from borrowing against nothing. I'm calling in sick tomorrow, I said. Kevin stared. You've never called in sick. First time for everything. I drove home thinking about Emily's key in Marcus's pocket, about Sarah's eyes in her daughter's face, about my father, who died with casino chips in his pocket. Not valuable ones, just the kind they give you for joining the Players Club at home. I called in sick for Saturday. My manager, Tony, was shocked. You okay? You've been here 11 years, never missed a shift. Food poisoning. I lied. Feel better. We need you Sunday. Sunday. 2 days from now. Marcus would be back by then if he found money. If those men he borrowed from hadn't caught up with him. If he hadn't done something irreversible. That I spent Saturday in bed with Stevie. Not sick, but not well either. Thought about Emily in Chicago, probably not sleeping. About Dorothy's father dying angry. About cycles and cards, and the difference between dealing and enabling. There wasn't one. That was the truth I'd been avoiding for 11 years. My phone buzzed. Text from Dorothy, of all people. She'd gotten my number from another dealer. Marcus is in the hospital. Collapsed at bus stop. Dehydration and exhaustion. Room 247 at Regional. I stared at the message, then deleted it, then retrieved it from recently deleted, then deleted it again. What was I supposed to do? Visit? Bring flowers? Say sorry for taking your money while you starved yourself? Instead, I calculated how much I'd made from Marcus over 6 weeks. Roughly $2,000 in tips, 2 months' rent, 3 months of utilities, food for Stevie for a year, blood money. Every cent. I went back to bed, but couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about him in that hospital bed, maybe with Emily there, maybe alone, definitely without money for the bill. Sunday morning, I went back to work. Marcus's usual seat was empty, but a new desperate face had filled it. Woman named Marcy, crying quietly while betting her wedding ring at the pawn shop across the street, then using that money at my table. Husband left me, she explained to no one. 20 years. Found someone younger. I dealt her cards and took her tips and thought about Marcus in the hospital. Emily's key still in his pocket probably. Sarah 7 weeks dead. Raymond stopped by the table. Heard your regulars in the hospital. Marcus? Yeah. Apparently, he's got family with him. Daughter came down from Chicago. Something loosened in my chest. Emily had come back. Despite everything, she'd come back. He'll be okay, Raymond said. Though neither of us believed it. They always bounce back. But bouncing back and being okay were different things. Marcus might leave the hospital, might even stop gambling, might reconcile with Emily. But he'd never be the man in those photos Emily showed me, the one coaching soccer and dancing at anniversaries. That man died with Sarah. What was left was just trying to find a way to stop hurting. I dealt the rest of my shift thinking about Emily at his bedside, wondering if she'd brought the key back or if it was still in his pocket. A question neither of them could answer yet. 3 weeks later, April. Marcus never came back. The table felt different without him, though new faces had already filled his void, each one carrying their own catastrophe, their own reason for being here instead of somewhere safe. Dorothy told me she'd heard from Vince, who'd heard from someone at the hospital, that Marcus was in GA now. Gamblers Anonymous. Living with Emily, working third shift at an Amazon warehouse. Good for him, I said, and meant it, but his ghost was everywhere. In Marcy, whose divorce was final and who'd started selling furniture. In Brandon, The college kid now using student loan money for chips. And a man who wouldn't give his name, but had that same milk-turning smell Marcus had carried. You ever think about quitting? Dorothy asked one night, oxygen tubes whistling slightly as she breathed. Dealing. Enabling, she said, which was the first time anyone had used that word to my face that I dealt her cards instead of answering. She had 15 against my showing 10. She stayed. I busted. Sometimes you win by doing nothing. My father died angry. She continued, collecting her small winnings. But you know what? At least he died. Some people just keep going, already dead but still walking around. She looked at the nameless man who'd taken Marcus's seat. He was muttering about a system, how he'd figured out the pattern, how tonight was the night everything changed. It was never the night everything changed. It was always the night everything stayed exactly the same. Raymond approached me during my break. We're still looking for a shift manager. You interested? More money. Less dealing. One step removed from the direct destruction. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. Opportunity won't stay open. Opportunity. Strange word for moving up in a place that made its money from other people moving down. That night, a text came through from an unknown Chicago number. I knew before opening it. Dad is 5 weeks clean. Got his 30-day chip. Thank you for meeting with me. It helped somehow. Emily, attached was a photo. Marcus and Emily at what looked like a church basement. He was smaller, grayer, but present. Holding a coin in one hand, Emily's hand in the other, he looked like someone who'd survived something unsurvivable. Which maybe he had. I stared at that photo during my entire break. This man I'd watched dissolve for 6 weeks, now trying to re-solidify. Would it stick? Statistics said probably not. Most gambling addicts relapsed within the first year, but Emily was there. That had to count for something. You're regular? Kevin asked, looking over my shoulder. Former regular. Good for him. Hey, you taking that shift manager spot? Maybe. You should. Same casino, same shit, but at least you're not pulling the trigger yourself. Pulling the trigger. Interesting metaphor for dealing cards. That I went back to my table, dealt to the nameless man who'd already lost 500 he probably didn't have. To Marcy, whose wedding ring was long gone. To Brandon, who'd get a brutal education in compound interest when those student loans came due. Each hand I dealt was a small violence. Each tip I took was complicity, but rent was due. Electricity wasn't free. Stevie needed food. Those were the excuses I told myself, the same ones my father probably used, the same ones Marcus told himself those first nights. Everyone had reasons. Nobody had solutions. The shift manager position would pay $1,200 more per month. Enough to maybe save something. Maybe go back to school. Maybe become something other than a dealer of destruction. Maybe was a dangerous word in a casino. Maybe was how everyone lost everything. But it was also, sometimes, how people found a way out. 2 months later. I was wearing a shift manager blazer now instead of a dealer's vest. Same casino, same desperation, but 1 degree removed. I watched dealers do what I used to do, checked counts, managed breaks, filed reports. My phone buzzed during dinner break. Emily again. Dad wanted me to thank you. He says he wasn't always kind. He's at 67 days clean now. Has a sponsor. Still has nightmares about the sound of cards being shuffled. Attached was no photo this time, just a scan of a handwritten letter. On yellow legal paper. Marcus's writing, careful and deliberate. Diane, I don't know if Emily will actually send this to you, but I need to write it anyway. Part of my recovery, they say. Making amends that I made you complicit in my destruction. That wasn't fair. You were doing your job, and I turned you into a witness to my collapse. Worse, I made you a participant. You were kind even when dealing my defeat. You could have been cold, mechanical, indifferent. Instead, you saw me as human even as I became something less than that. I dream about that table every night. The soft felt, the whisper of cards, your patient voice calling out totals. I wake up checking my pockets for chips that aren't there, for money I don't have, for a life I gambled away. Emily saved me. But you did something too, even if you don't know it. You reminded me that there were still people in the world who could see pain and not look away entirely. I'm working now. Warehouse, 3rd shift. It's honest work. Exhausting but clean. I've saved $1,800. Emily helped me set up a payment plan for the rest. It will take years to dig out, but at least I'm digging up now instead of down. I know you have your own story. Your own reasons for being there. I hope you find your way out too, whatever that looks like. Thank you for your humanity in an inhuman place. Marcus P.S. I still have Emily's key. Carry it everywhere. Someday I'll use it. When I'm ready. When I'm sure I won't disappoint her again. I read it 3 times in the casino bathroom, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Then folded it carefully, put it in my wallet next to that $20 bill he'd given me with Emily's graduation dinner written on it. Back on the floor, I watched a dealer named Alex. Young, maybe 25, deal to a woman who was clearly in over her head. She had that look, that smell, that desperation Marcus had carried. Take a break, I told Alex. I'll cover. I sat down at the table for the first time in 2 months. The cards felt familiar in my hands, muscle memory intact. Ma'am, I said to the desperate woman. Table's closing for maintenance. What? But tables closed. Cash out at the cage. She looked confused but gathered her remaining chips, maybe $40, and left. Alex looked at me questioningly when he returned. Sometimes, I said, we need to know when to stop dealing. He didn't understand. He was young. He'd learn, or he'd become like I was, or he'd quit before either happened. That night, I went home and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked up nursing programs. Community college had an LPN program. 18 months. I could afford it now with the manager's salary if I was careful. I filled out the application at my kitchen table while Stevie watched. Put the 20 with Emily's graduation dinner written on it in the envelope with the application fee. Seemed right somehow. Money from destruction funding something else. Maybe something better. The letter from Marcus sat on my table. Evidence that people could change, could climb out of holes, could choose their children over their compulsions. Eventually, sometimes, maybe 0.6 months later, August. I was packing up my apartment, Stevie watching from his carrier, suspicious of all the boxes. I'd been accepted to nursing school. Classes started in 2 weeks, but my last shift at the casino was tonight. 11 years, ending where it began, at a blackjack table, dealing cards to people trying to change their luck. That afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Diane, 6 months clean yesterday. Emily wanted to throw a party. I just wanted to survive the day without gambling. We compromised. Dinner at the restaurant where Sarah and I had our first date. That I'm writing because I need to tell you something. That last hand you dealt me, soft 17. I stayed when I should have hit. You had 18. I lost. But 4. The first time in weeks, I played it safe instead of reckless. Still lost, but lost with dignity. If that makes sense, that hand stays with me. The reminder that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean winning. Sometimes it just means not losing everything. Emily's graduating next spring, getting her master's in social work. Says she wants to help people with addiction. I told her, about you, about your father. She says cycles can break, just not all at once. Slowly, deliberately, one choice at a time. I used her key last week. Walked into her apartment with my own groceries, cooked dinner, acted like a father instead of a ghost. It was the hardest thing I've done since Sarah died. Also the best. I included something in this letter. It's not much, but it's yours. Payment. For a debt I can't really repay. Be well. Be more than well. Be free. Marcus. Inside the envelope was a money order for $2,000. The exact amount I'd calculated I'd taken from him in tips over those 6 weeks. I held it for a long time. This piece of paper that represented so much destruction and maybe, now, something else. That night, my last shift, I dealt to all the familiar faces. Dorothy, still playing $20 hands, still making them last. Vince, complaining about construction work, never betting more than he could afford. New faces too, carrying new disasters, new griefs, new holes they were trying to fill with. Cards and chips. You really leaving? Raymond asked during my break. Really leaving? For what? Nursing school. He laughed, not meanly. From dealing cards to dealing with sick people. You like suffering? I like the idea of helping instead of. I gestured at the casino floor. This is helping. We provide entertainment. Sure, I said. Entertainment. At 2 a.m., I dealt my last hand. Soft 17 for the player, just like Marcus's last hand. They stayed. I had 19. They lost. The player, a young man who reminded me of Marcus when he first sat down, pushed his remaining chips forward for one more hand. Tables closed, I said, even though it wasn't. What? The sign says, Tables closed. I stood up, took off my dealer's vest for the last time, and walked away. Left him sitting there confused, but with chips he could cash out instead of lose.in. My car. I looked at Marcus's money order again. $2,000. Enough for books, scrubs, maybe a better stethoscope than the student kit provided. Money from gambling, funding, and education to help people. There was poetry in that, or irony. Or maybe both. I drove home thinking about Soft 17, that hand that haunted both Marcus and me. The safe play that still loses. Sometimes that's all we can do. Play it safe and accept the loss, knowing that not everything is winnable, not every game is meant to be played to the end.at home. I set up Stevie's carrier for tomorrow's move to a smaller apartment near the college. Folded Marcus's letters carefully, put them with my father's death certificate. Some documents we keep not because they bring joy, but because they prove we survived something. Tomorrow I'd start becoming something other than a dealer. But tonight, I sat at my kitchen table, imagining all the people still at the casino, still playing, still hoping their luck would change. Marcus was out there somewhere, probably unable to sleep, fighting the urge to gamble every single day. Emily was with him, or near him, making sure he remembered why he quit. And me? I was finally ready to stop dealing, to stop watching people drown, to stop taking tips from disasters. The Soft 17 stayed in my mind, standing when hitting might win, but might also bust. Sometimes the safest play is to hold what you have, even if it's not enough, even if you'll probably lose. Sometimes losing small is its own kind of victory that I closed my eyes and saw it one more time. Marcus's last hand, Soft 17, choosing safety over risk for once. Still losing, but losing with something intact. Dignity, maybe, or hope, or just the knowledge that he'd finally stopped hitting when hitting would hurt. Tomorrow, nursing school. Tonight, the last night of dealing cards. 11 years, ending with the same Soft 17 that started Marcus's recovery. The cards don't care about our stories. But sometimes, if we're lucky or careful or both, we find a way to stop playing before we lose everything. Sometimes we even find a way to help others do the same.